Welcome to the Top 10 Gardener with Master Gardener Ken Lain. Gardening can be challenging, but with Ken's tips, tricks, and top 10 advice, you'll reap huge rewards. Now welcome your garden host, Ken Lain.
And welcome to this week's edition of The Mountain Gardener. Your host, Ken Lain, here every week talking about the landscapes of Northern Arizona. And this is what we live for. In Northern Arizona, actually, I was up in Las Vegas this week, had some business up there with some pottery distribution things, and it was beautiful up there. I think it was 80 degrees in the morning. Of course, we bugged out before it heated up in the middle of the day, but I think it's even nicer in the mountains of Arizona. So as we come from the desert up the hill, you can just sleep better up here. Windows are open, turned off the air conditioning, the heater's not going yet. It's perfect. It's perfect for hiking and biking. It's perfect for kayaking. It's just perfect. The autumn in the mountains of Arizona is just the best. And your gardens think it's the best too. So you're seeing a lot of plants right now. They're just in all their glory. You're starting to see every day the colors starting to enhance more and more. And so you see sumacs. There's a shrub that's out there in the wild even. It's orange right now. It's always the announcer. It says, it is autumn. Here we are. And so from there, the sumacs, we also have them available to plant. If you just want a native, robust plant that is super hardy in the summer, you can't kill the thing. You're not going to need to water it once it's rooted and going. And it always has this beautiful orange to red color in the fall. Well, sumacs, that's your plant. It's so easy to care for. And so the next one that's coming online is a tree. It's the maples are going. So you're starting to see the top edge of the maples are starting to turn red or gold. There's two varieties. There's Acer rubrum or red maples, and there's Acer saccharinum, which is more of the sugar or the gold colors, more of an aspen gold. Both are magnificent. Right now, the reds seem to be the ones that are the most popular. I think it's because we have so much gold. Arizona naturally has gold and blue. Those are our two native landscape colors. So you see all the junipers are blue, the Arizona cypress are blue, the scrub oaks are blue, lots and lots of blue. And so it's nice to have green. So that's where it's just kind of nice to introduce a pine tree in there, an Austrian pine, this nice rich green that's year round. So we'd like to contrast that. The other one naturally that occurs is gold. You see a lot of gold color. Aspens, of course, are the number one thought of as gold. So they're starting to go up in the mountains as well. You're seeing that edge, first leading edge. And for the next month, it's going to be spectacular. And so it's a very good time. If you're seeing something out there and you go, oh, wow, that's really pretty. I would like to have one of those in my backyard. You too. Now is the time to plant those. You have your best selection of maples, aspens available now. You've got your best selection of your evergreens. That would be pines and spruce and fir and cypress and cedars and junipers, all those winter evergreens. This is the time when you plant those. So you go, Ken said there's too much blue. You're right. It would be nice to have some green in there. And so you can plant that. You don't feel like this is hard for you folks from the more deserty tropical areas of the Southern Cals, Palm Springs, Phoenix, Tucson's. You're thinking, oh, no, you can't plant now. It's going to get cold. It's going to get below 50. You can't plant now. That is not true. Actually, fall is the best time for planting. In fact, in the Midwest, you folks from the East Coast and Midwest, fall is for planting. It's a big theme back there. And so you put in a lot of trees, a lot of big shrubs back then. If you're thinking of a privacy screens for evergreens, you've got a good selection, and it's a good time to plant them. And your neighbors are going to be seeing you more than ever as soon as the deciduous plants, that is those plants that lose or drop their leaves. Typically the fall colored plants will drop their leaves. And by the end of November, the yard can be naked. This is almost the time when you look across the yard and you're waving at your neighbors in their kitchen because they're looking at you in your kitchen. You just, because that tree that was there is now dropped its leaves and naked. So this is a time to spot treat. to place strategically those evergreen plants, and it's a good time to plant. I thought I would touch on, just because the flowers of autumn are nicer than many of the other seasons. And so my mums have been spectacular for a month, and they're still in all their glory. They'll be that way through till 1st of December. Then they'll kind of turn to this nice straw color. They're just the shape, even when they're true perennials, they will hibernate underground and kind of just stay alive underground. They'll come back fresh next spring. Well, this is I think even as they start to turn their autumn color is gold, the flowers will turn to a straw color, and the whole plant turns to the straw color. It's beautiful, with or without color. With its green or whether it's straw color, it's just a beautiful plant, and it grows better here than anywhere else in the country. We don't have, first of all, the East Coast. It's just an annual. You put it out there, you fully expect to throw it away. Not so here. They're very robust because we're a mild climate. And so they come back for years to come. Mums or chrysanthemums are a tremendous plant. Now's the time you just get the best selection right now, because when you plant them. Snapdragons are another one that kind of a companion to mums. Snapdragons and mums both are javelina proof, deer proof, rabbit proof. I mean, they just don't bother them. And so they're kind of one of those kind of bulletproof plants you can put out there. Snapdragons, they actually think they're wildflowers. They'll reseed out in the yard. They kind of tumble down a hillside. They come in many colors. They got a tremendously long bloom cycle. They'll bloom in the spring. They take a little break in summer. They start to bloom again in fall. And then they'll keep their green through winter. They may not bloom in January, but they'll have their green foliage. So it's a good, strong plant, stronger plant for here than I think anywhere else in the country. In the deserts, they get too hot and they just flush out. They're truly an annual down there. They will die in the summer. In the East Coast, they're gonna freeze in the winter. But here we're in this perfect balance. That's why we live here. I mean, it doesn't get hot in the summer, it doesn't get cold in the winter. But we have 4 seasons. It's 4 seasons without all the just crazy extremes that other parts of the country have. That's why we live here. And your plants will love you. They'll keep blooming for you longer than most. Asters are kind of, I always think of asters and mums. They're both a classic autumn type of flower, a true perennial again. So it's a perennial and permanent. Both start with P, so they come back year after year. An annual just lasts for 1 year, then it's gone. So it just it can come back by seed, but it won't come back by that root. A perennial will actually come back. That same exact plant will come up in the yard from that root. It just hibernates underground typically. Asters are another one of those types of perennials. And it's a native. So there's a lot of native perennial flowers. There's a real pretty white one that's out there right now, just out in the fields, out in the forest. You'll run across it. Those are asters, and you can plant them. They come in pinks and purples and whites and yellows, lots of choices. One of my favorites that I just look spectacular in my yard right now are autumn joy sedums. Now, there's a lot of varieties of sedums. Most of them are real low growing. They creep through rock gardens and around. They're kind of a ground covery kind of thing, but not autumn joy sedums. These are knee-high, stunning perennials. They got the same sedum foliage. So it's got a real fleshy, watery foliage, but the flowers are bright pink to almost red. And so they'll bloom like that. They look their best in the autumn. That's their name, autumn joy, because they look so striking now through the end of the year. Then they'll go ahead and hibernate underground like a true perennial, and then they'll come back again for you next spring. Another that I like in my yard, kind of one of my top, I like mums in the autumn, but one of my favorite perennials for year round would have to be echinacea. Gaillardia or blanket flower. That's another name. So Gaillardia or blanket flower. And I like that one only because it's a true native. So we put that particular seed in all of our wildflower seed. You can buy just a plant in full bloom as well. But it starts to bloom in like April. It doesn't stop blooming until like end of November. It's got the craziest bloom cycle. That's one that benefits from pinch the flowers off. It'll keep blooming over and over and over. We've got a lot in store for you here. Let's take a quick break, come back, and we'll discuss some more flowers and plants of autumn with you right after this.
Autumn is the most beautiful time of the year in the mountains, and Waters Garden Center has the brightest trees.
We've collected 700 hardy trees, including maple, aspen, ash, and oak.
Each is ready to plant, so you can enjoy brilliant fall foliage in your yard.
Shop online at top10trees.com or visit us in Prescott.
Trees are brighter at Waters Garden Center in Prescott and online at top10trees.com. You're listening to Garden Master Ken Lain, owner of Waters Garden Center in Prescott. Join his daily podcast for timely garden advice seasonally right for the gardens. Ken can be found throughout the week at Waters Garden Center in Prescott or through his website at top10gardener.com. You're listening to Garden Master Ken Lain and the Top 10 Gardener podcast. Welcome to the Top 10 Garden Show.
And I have a special guest in the studio. She's been a guest in my world for 37, is it 30? How long have we been married? 36 or 37? 37 years.
Yep.
Blissful. And add some adjectives in there. My wife, Lisa Lain, she comes in and just shares just what your neighbors are talking about, Q&A questions, what we're finding on Facebook, Instagram. People are asking questions from everywhere anymore. They got a device and they might be out. Had someone hiking around the other day going, "Hey kid, you know what this is?" Going, "How did you get my number? Where is this? Who is this?" I didn't pick it up, just saw the number.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's just how people connect anymore. So welcome to the studio, Lisa.
Thank you. Always good to be here. Oops, I'm messing with my microphone. Sorry.
Q&A?
Yes. So our first question is from Amanda. She has a beautiful coleus growing outside in a pot. She knows that it's only likes the warm weather, so she wants to bring it in before it's cold. Her question is, can you grow a coleus inside through the winter?
Yeah.
And if so, what kind of light inside your house would it want?
Yeah, the coleus is a great houseplant. Yeah, you can absolutely bring it indoors. There's a couple insider tips on before you do that. So first of all, they're huge. So they've been growing all season. You might consider pruning things back a little bit. Otherwise, it's going to take up some serious room inside your house. So give it a haircut. Just kind of let it. Now's the time. Take some of the spent flowers. I'll clean it up so it's not dropping things in your house. And then bring it in. Now, there's stuff living in the soil. You just have to be aware. So I would, before I brought in the worms and the centipedes and the things growing in that soil, and I would probably do two things. One, I would water it until water is just flooding. Now try to get some of those things, just flood them. Have water, give it triple the water amount. Just give it till it's gooey wet. Things are coming out. You'll find some things run away. Okay, that's one way. And then I would probably treat it with a systemic granule. So while it's outdoors, there's a granular that you sprinkle on the ground, you water it in, and as it goes to the soil, it kills off things that are still living in the soil. So you're going to have things living in there. I can't emphasize that enough. I've made that one a few times. Worms crawling across the carpet. That's never good. And so, but soil gnats, all kinds of stuff. I would also spray the top section. So I'd get some neem oil, something organic-y, spritz the foliage. So cut it back, spritz it, take your just to kill off eggs, things that are living on the foliage. Put the systemic granules on to kill things living in the soil. Let it out, keep it out there for a couple of days, and then bring it indoors. Amanda was asking, what's the other one? Oh, light. How much light? Just a bright room. That's enough. So I would say the darkest rooms, probably not ideal, but right in front of that south facing, it's get blistering hot is not going to be ideal either. Just a nice bright room. It'll thrive. And you could bring it back outdoors and enjoy it again. Starting, usually frost is the end of April, first part of May. Just take it outside and have it, enjoy it for another year.
Those coleus do get big. I brought one I brought 2 home to plant by the front door. I was going to put them in the same pot. And of course, I dropped one and completely broke it. So I only put 1 in the pot.
Yeah.
And thank heavens I did.
One's plenty. They grow fast.
It took over the entire thing, but
Yeah.
it sure is pretty. And
they're spectacular.
yeah, coleus have that beautiful color. Definitely worth it to try and bring it in.
Yeah.
That's for sure. All right. So Aaron was on vacation, extended vacation for a long, long time. Came back home and the horehound has taken over his yard.
I thought he was going to say the irrigation failed or something. And then, where did you travel to, Aaron? I'm jealous.
I know. But he wants to know the best way to kill the horehound and
Yeah.
prevent it from coming back.
Yeah. So horehound's a native weed. I don't know if it's native, but it's a nasty weed.
Mm.
It's pretty, actually. It's got a nice gray thing, but it's got a root that goes down to China, and it just propagates and keeps taking over entire pastures, entire front yards. And so if left unchecked, all you'll have left is horehound everywhere. So, and it is a perennial. So it's going to come back from the roots every year. So whereas goat head and tumbleweeds, some of these others, they come back by seed. So if you can control the seed, you can kind of get ahead of it. Horehound's not that way. You got to be more aggressive. The secret with this, you get a pump up sprayer, and then we've got a product here called Decimate. It's an alternative to Roundup. It's not as dangerous though, but it will obliterate horehound. Here's the insider tip. In the same tank, so mix it up at the recommended rate. I think it's a couple ounces per gallon. It goes a long ways. But add in the same container, add some spreader sticker. There's a liquid that you add to it that will penetrate that real fuzzy. Horehound has a texture to the foliage.
Mm-hmm.
And so the product wants to float on top of the leaf, and so you don't get the penetration. Spreader sticker forces it down onto the surface of that leaf, so you get a much faster, better, stronger knockdown, much more gratifying. The death rate will double. It's just a better way to go. If you don't do that, you'll have to use more product. It'll take longer for it to actually activate, and it may not kill it all the way because it just floated on top of that texture. So spreader sticker, anytime I'm spraying weeds, I add spreader sticker just because it makes everything kill much faster. So if I'm going to take that kind of energy and work, I want everything to die that I spray. I don't want you going yellow and looking at me, then coming back with a vengeance. No, when I get done with you, you're not going to think about coming back. So especially goat head, tumbleweeds, horehound, foxtail.
And Decimate only kills whatever it's sprayed on.
Correct. Yeah.
It's not going to move through the soil. It's not going to poison your soil.
Right.
Any of that. And then the other
Topical
question
kill.
was, how do you keep it from coming back? Since it's a perennial, you just got to kill it out.
I missed that one, Eric. Yeah.
Or
so there's a granular here. It's called weed and grass stopper. So you can spread that on. In fact, in October, you should fertilize everything in the yard, all your trees, shrubs, everything. At the same time, especially for you, Aaron, put weed and grass stopper in those areas where the weeds seem to really come back at you. What it does, it creates a barrier in the soil that does not allow the seed to put that taproot down. And so it just eliminates or greatly reduces the weed pressure coming at you, especially if you're in a windy area where just things roll in at you from the field across or down the driveway where the horehound is just gathering or the goat head is popping the tires of the tractors. Put it there. It'll take care of all the work for you. It'll pay for itself. And a bag covers, I think, 5,200 square feet, a long ways.
Right.
So spread it out, pray for rain the next month, and your weed problems are done.
Okay. So our next question is from Jake. He was in the store and saw a Black Hills spruce. And his question is, can he grow it in a container because he's renting a house? He doesn't want to plant there. But can he grow that in a container?
Yeah, easily for years and years. I mean, so that's a Black Hill spruce is like a Colorado spruce, only pint size. It's smaller, has a tighter needle. It's a little bit greener. It's quite striking. Very, very Christmassy, holiday is very shapely to it. It's quite striking. The secret for you is going to be the size of the pot. So you could go with just the next size up. It would probably grow in the pot that's at the nursery here at the garden center for at least a year. If you went up the next size, you can get 2 years. If you want 2 or 3 sizes, you could get 5 or 6 or more years. So bigger, the more soil you have for that tree to grow in, the more years you can enjoy it before it finally grows out of its pot. So yeah, go for it, Jake.
And watering
Oh.
for those guys, especially like in the winter, a lot of people don't think to
Maybe,
water in the winter.
maybe once a week is a good soak. Here's the thing with containers. Actually, any new planting that you're going to put in now went through, let's say, the new year. When you hear the weatherman going, it's going to be a cold one. There's a cold storm coming. Water everything. A hydrated plant goes through that cold event like it was nothing. It keeps all the antifreeze moving back and forth through the structure of the plant. And so, especially if it's in a container or a raised bed where things are more confined, they can dry out a little bit, let's say, faster than out in the yard. Water that plant before that cold event comes, and it'll go through and not even feel the cold. It's kind of counterintuitive.
Yep.
You think drier is better, but not for plants. Wetter is better. So, great question. We are out of time. So, Ken and Lisa Lain, the Mountain Gardeners. Be right back. Feed your plants now for bigger, brighter, better fruit in spring.
Water's 644 fruit tree food is safely organic with added calcium for sweeter fruit quality.
Far safer for your pets and birds than those chemical fertilizers the box store sells.
And it's kinder on the environment, too.
Simply sprinkle on the soil and water it in.
Bigger, brighter, and better fruits in spring.
Get yours today at Waters Garden Center in Prescott. Natural, safe, organic.
You're listening to Ken Lain, aka the Top 10 Gardener. Ken can be found throughout the week in Prescott at Waters Family Garden Center. Listen daily as he answers the top 10 questions of the week, streaming on Apple, Google, Spotify, or wherever you download your podcasts. You've tuned in to the Top 10 Garden Show with garden expert Ken Lain. Join the conversation daily as he answers timely garden questions. Email Ken a question directly from your phone to his desktop through the web at watersgardencenter.com. That's Waters with 2 T's, gardencenter.com. Or visit face-to-face throughout the week where he can be found at Waters Garden Center in Prescott. Now welcome your host, Ken Lain.
Now, I grew up in Prescott, Arizona. So this Central Highlands area. As a kid, man, we would just tear up the countryside. So boys would jump in cars and just go out in the forest, and we'd come back sometimes days later. We would back then, there just weren't people out there. It kind of reminds me, there's one place in the county that still reminds me of that. If you go out Williamson Valley Road, up towards I-40, so past Inscription Canyon, past Las Vegas Ranch, the road actually turns to dirt. If it's like another 40 miles at that point up to I-40, that part of the country is still wild, untamed, natural. You can go out there and, like, if you break down, you better be prepared because there might not be someone to come by to help you. And so you just had to always think, be prepared, be ready. And you always helped each other. So if you ran across someone that broke down, there might not be someone after you drive by for a day. It was truly wild. And so I missed that a little bit. I like having all the amenities of a big city. So that's kind of nice. Back then we didn't have that. We had, I think when I was growing up, we had a Sears catalog store. It wasn't a store. It was a counter in a little shed, basically, where you could go order from the catalog and they would deliver it. This is way beyond it, way before Amazon. They'd show up and deliver things in the catalog store. You go pick it up from there and bring it home with you. So that was about as big city as we used to be back in the 70s, early 80s. And so we've all grown up now. So it's kind of nice. One thing that I've always noticed, one of the wild things in the garden are spiders. And there's one in the fall, late, whenever the monsoons hit through autumn, there's a phenomena that happens in Arizona. It's unique to us. I would say this northern Arizona, Albuquerque, the Four Corners area, tarantulas. We're famous for tarantulas. There's lots of tarantulas. The biggest spider in the country is a tarantula. They just roam around. And an interesting fact about tarantulas, the females, they really don't. They live underground in a nest, in a burrow. and they don't roam around. Their radius or influence is about, I don't know, maybe 10 yards, if that. So they stick next to their nest. And so when you see a tarantula roaming around the countryside, sometimes they'll be in little packs. They're always males. The guys are the only ones that roam looking for females. And so when you see a spider roaming around in the backyard or the garden, it's almost guaranteed it's going to be a boy. And he's looking for one thing. He's looking for a gal. And it's kind of interesting what happens with tarantulas. It's kind of you'll see a big hole in the ground, not necessarily under a rock, just a big old hole. And sometimes you'll see some spider webs down in there. It's usually a tarantula nest for the female. She's a little smaller, but he'll come up and goes, yeah, I know what's in there. And he's not going to go down there because he'll be eaten probably. He kind of taps. They have this ritual where he kind of uses he just taps around and kind of woos her out with a dance drum, kind of a drum beat. She comes up and goes, wow, I kind of like the sound of that. And then they kind of mate, do their thing. And then he usually scurries off pretty fast. He's not hanging around, or he can be her next meal. So he knows that. And he's looking for the next gal to kind of go. So there's this courtship thing. So tarantulas, they're very good for the garden, especially the females, because they stick around and they can actually help you out. They eat a lot of the big bugs, like big centipedes, grasshoppers, crickets, earwigs, all the nasty things that eat your gardens. Tarantulas they do nothing but good for you. And they're not going to leave a web or a cobweb or something up in the corners of your gazebos and the patios. Are underground. They're kind of clean, neat. They do a lot of good for you. So they're exceptionally good for the garden. So I've handled a lot of tarantulas. I've played with them. The funniest story I've ever had, I had a tarantula in the garage once. And I'm going, okay, listen, little man, I know what you are. You're your boy. Okay, keep moving. There's no gals inside the garage. Come on, keep moving. So I kind of pushed him out. I didn't have a broom. I just took my foot and kind of skewed him out. Kind of, here, move that way, move that way, move that way. And he got ticked. And so he looked at me, looked at my tennis shoe, and then he jumped about 5 feet, literally jumped. He didn't run. He jumped across the garage, landed on the front of my foot. I am freaking out going, Gah! Oh my gosh, that's how they take their prey down. They're not slowly coming over going, I think I'll have a meal of a centipede right now. No, they jump on it, go, boosh, I'm sucking you down right now. And so I just freaked out. I hurled him outside the garage. He went flying, landed on the driveway, and then crawled off. That's the best story I have. Oh, I have another one. My sister lived in the bedroom right across from me. We lived down the basement of this 2-story house out in Wildwood Estates in Prescott. And one day she crawled in bed, pulled down the sheets, and lo and behold, a tarantula had come inside, gone into her room, and was underneath the sheets. And she pulls this thing back, and there's this huge spider there. We're famous for our spiders. Don't freak out. They're okay. They're good. Just pick them up. We've got a bucket. We just picked them up, threw them outside, but just kind of be kind to them. They're roaming around. And the ones that are roaming around, they're always boys. Now you learn something about garden spiders right here on The Mountain Gardener. Be right back after this. Water's October companion plants that grow well together are blaze maples, spicy mums, glamour kale, and burning bush.
Water's compact burning bush is a neat, well-behaved shrub prized for its blazing red foliage in the fall.
Looks great when planted with autumn gold sumacs, lilacs, and gold euonymus.
At 6 foot, this bush makes a natural hedge that burns red through autumn, all for $49.
You'll find the showiest shrubs here at Waters Garden Center.
Siri, give me directions to Waters Garden Center. The Top 10 Gardener, your source for timely garden advice, seasonally correct for the garden, guaranteed to make a difference in your yard this season. You've tuned in to the Top 10 Gardener with garden expert Ken Lain. Join him daily as he answers timely garden questions that are sure to make a difference in your gardens. Now welcome your host, Ken Lain.
And we are back in the studio with Lisa Lain. She's a garden extraordinaire, has a lot of talent, beautiful gardens. And so I can't believe the number of tomatoes you are picking. Stop bringing those to the kitchen. There's mountains of them. It's ridiculous.
It is.
Cucumbers. We need more. We got to create a relish, a cucumber soup, something. There's
We need
so many
recipes.
coupons.
If you have a good recipe for fresh tomatoes,
Yeah.
fresh cucumbers,
Bruschetta.
zucchini, yeah, we need some ideas.
I love the jalapeno soup you made this week. It was
That was
kind of
good.
so just peppers and some zucchinis
It
going
has
in,
zucchini
and
in it.
some fresh
Yeah.
herbs. Oh my
Mhm.
gosh, my mouth's watering just thinking about it. It was
There you
so
go.
good. But that's the beauty of gardening.
Yes.
It forces you to figure out. I grew
What do
this
I do with it?
new Japanese Oriental eggplant. What do you do with those? Oh, here we go.
Oh wait, I don't
It-
like
it
eggplant.
So you just kind of get creative
Yeah.
with it. It's kind of, how do I can this? What kind of leathers can you make with that?
Right.
What kind of, sangria can you make with cucumbers? You can do with mint and basil, or it's kind of fun to kind of play with
I don't
those
know about
things.
that, but we'll see. Yeah.
So what do you got for us?
Well, yes, we are harvesting lots of things, but I also know we're kind of getting to the end of the season. It's officially fall
It is.
now.
Yeah.
So I put together my fall to-do list. I know you
Perfect.
have yours.
Yeah.
This one's mine.
I love it. Love to share it. I'll try not to jump in.
We'll see how that works out. So first thing I recommend, and I do this every year, and people go, "Oh yeah, I should have done that." But if you have a certain vegetable, certain tomato that you just loved and you thought it did really well, keep the tag or take a picture of the tag, because I cannot tell you how many times people come back in and go, "I bought it here last year. It was green."
It had green leaves. It got up head high. It was red.
Right. And I cannot tell you how many varieties of tomatoes, peppers, flowers,
Yeah.
you name it. And I will guarantee you, I cannot remember all of them.
Yeah.
So just taking a quick picture of that tag or throwing it in a baggie and saving it. If
Yeah.
you're not into digital, you can still save it.
Everyone has a camera phone. It's too easy to go click. I got it.
Yeah.
So
And
it's there.
just-
Can I find it in my pictures later? That's the question.
That's a good question.
So,
The other thing is, if you had like a container gardening combination that you really liked, like you put certain flowers together, certain colors, and you're like, "Oh my gosh, I love that." Take a picture of it,
Yeah.
because you will not remember next year what it was. So it just kind of saves you that time later on. The other thing to think about is where you put things this year. Ask yourself, did they do well? So did my tomatoes do good in this spot? Maybe you need to rotate things around the yard. It's always wise, especially with vegetables,
yeah.
to rotate things
flowers.
around, even
Yeah.
flowers. Yeah. So just kind of taking some notes, taking some pictures can just save you a lot of aggravation next spring.
I think the reason gardeners forget what they planted last year,
Mm-hmm.
I think we got to blame it on eggnog. Something. It's a holiday season. Something about, we've got the holidays coming. So you ended in fall, you're about to go with spring, and then I think eggnog gets in the way or something.
Blanks your memory.
Yeah,
Huh?
it's just like erases stuff. I can't remember.
Pull out those tired looking annuals.
Yeah. Oh my
They're just
gosh.
bringing you down. I know you want to wait till the very last second and you have the frost and get your money's worth out of them. But seriously, now is a great time to get rid of those calabacoas, the geranium, things that are just looking
Yeah.
And it's great to get those violas in, the pansies, the snapdragons, the heucheras. The sooner you kind of get them in and get them rooted out, they're going to be much happier going through wintertime.
I think people, they want to get their money's worth, and they're afraid to kill something. It's looking, it's so big. It treated me so well.
Mm-hmm.
But then you're doing disjustice for the things that you're going to plant later. So the violas, the pansies, the winter blooming things,
right,
they need their due as well. So if you give them time to root out, you'll get more enjoyment out of those. If you kill the things now, pull them out, make more room. So you can have color year round here.
Oh, definitely.
Because it's so mild if you time it right. And this is the transition right now.
Definitely. So if you have some things that are like some sedums or succulents that are not winter hardy, or say there's something you want, maybe some coleus you want to bring in and treat like a houseplant or
Yeah.
a mandevilla. Now is the time to think about getting those ready to move in, because that cold's going to strike when you're not ready for it, and then you're going to be caught flat-footed. So a lot of those pots that have been outside for the season, you probably want to treat them before you bring them back inside. So the systemic granules are excellent for that. They'll kill off any insects that are hanging out in that soil. The flies, those little gnats that love to hang around, the fungus gnats. So you kind of want to get them treated and cleaned up so you can move them inside. So a lot of people wait too long, then they find out a frost is coming, and they're like, "Oh my God!"
It's Halloween. Halloween is our first frost, so you got 3 weeks. You got some time.
But it can hit early too.
If you just take that coleus and bring it indoors, you will be stunned at the crawly, creepy things that come out of the pot when you bring it indoors.
Right.
So I say trim it back so it's more house plant size instead of patio size. Just get it down to size. Spray the foliage. I would say with Triple Action's organic spray, because there's things on the foliage and there's things in the ground. Then you treat it with the systemic granules. That'll go through the soil, killing off the
insects, the icky, creepy, crawly
like fungus gnats.
You don't want them in your house.
Centipedes, and I mean, just all kinds of stuff are in there.
Right.
And then bring it indoors before Halloween. You'll be happy that you did that. You'll be happy, and you know it. Clap your hands. You'll be happy anyway.
Okay. So it's a good time to shape up. So those summer blooming shrubs. So the butterfly bush that have kind of gone out of bloom, trim the blossoms off. You don't want to do major pruning. Don't do that. But you can trim up your blossoms on some of the things, Rose of Sharon's, butterfly bush. What are some other things that kind of
You might be able to trim off the rosebuds, and they'll you got enough time, they might actually bloom again. I mean, it's not, that would not surprise me a bit, or it will hold on to that new flower bud through all winter. So trim back the rosebud, the spent rosebuds.
Right. But don't do any major pruning, but just kind of cleaning them up, making them look a little spiffier.
Give them a haircut.
Yeah, because they've done hard work all summer long. Yeah. They need a little cleanup. Also, think about where you want to put some evergreen shrubs in.
I like it.
So we look at so many of our yards are just blooming stuff or just deciduous stuff. So they're leaves right now, but they're going to be dropping those leaves in another month or so. And then you have a yard that just looks
naked.
Yeah. So think about where you want to put those evergreens. We have some beautiful evergreen trees and shrubs in right now. It's the best time to look at those things because you're not going to get distracted by all the other stuff. So, because every yard, what do you always say? 25% or more?
20% should be of your plants should be evergreen of some sort. Evergreen trees, evergreen shrubs, something. And I would say you can do evergreens in containers. So if you got a flower garden like container, and you want a holly in there or an Adina, or
definitely
they do really well in containers through winter. They'll keep their foliage. They look fantastic.
Right.
They almost are more handsome than some of your flowery things in winter.
And we'll do that. We rip out some of that flowering stuff and put in some pretty evergreens that we can kind of decorate through the fall and winter with. So good idea, dear.
Yeah, full of it. Alberta spruce. You want a holiday-looking Christmas tree looking at the front door? It's a great one in containers. It's the number one seller as far as evergreen goes.
Very fun to decorate. And also, I think, and this is one I know you mentioned, but fertilize.
Yeah.
People, you need to fertilize. You know, where people come from different parts of the country, and I get it. You never really had to fertilize there, but you're not there anymore.
Yeah.
And it makes a huge difference in how your trees go through the winter, how they wake up in the spring, and just how they perform throughout the year.
The most important feeding of the entire year is autumn. And you mark it by whenever you see the aspens turn gold or the maples turn red, that's your cue. It's time to fertilize. The most important, you need don't use water soluble, use granular organic fertilizers, preferably bought from Waters Garden Center. But we make our own, but just use an organic granular food, and it's going to be a game changer. Thank you, Lisa. Great advice this week. Excuse me, Lisa's guide to better gardens. Be right back after this.
Autumn is the most beautiful time of the year in the mountains, and Waters Garden Center has the brightest trees.
We've collected 700 hardy trees, including maple, aspen, ash, and oak.
Each is ready to plant so you can enjoy brilliant fall foliage in your yard.
Shop online at top10trees.com or visit us in Prescott.
Trees are brighter at Waters Garden Center in Prescott and online at top10trees.com. You're listening to garden expert Ken Lain, owner of Waters Garden Center in Prescott. Look for more tips, tricks, and garden shortcuts through Ken's website. Additional shows of this podcast, read his weekly garden column, or follow him on Facebook, Instagram at watersgardencenter.com. That's Waters with 2 T's, gardencenter.com. Welcome to the Top 10 Garden Show with Ken Lain. Listen to Ken's tips, tricks, and garden shortcuts guaranteed to make your gardens more beautiful than ever this year. Now welcome your host, Ken Lain.
Now, at the bottom of the hour, I'd mentioned tarantulas. Are they good or bad for the gardens? And they're good. Mentioned that if you see a spider roaming around just you cross the street or out there, it's almost guaranteed a boy, because they're the only ones that roam around looking for a gal. Gals stick close to their nest. They don't roam around. Boys go after them. They don't go after the boys. So anyway, but javelina also tend to be rather rambunctious this time of year. And what they're really trying to do is quite a few things are trying to gain weight before the winter. They're putting on weight. They have a ferocious appetite this time of year. And so you'll find they get into things that maybe they've left alone all spring and summer. All of a sudden they're eating your potato vine or eating your whatever it is. You're going, wow, where'd that come from? Well, they're trying to bulk up. And so they're roaming around looking for more food. So their normal source, they're going, well, this is good, but I also want a few more calories. I think I'll go hit the next door neighbor too. And so there's a few plants that they just are not going to bother. I thought I would touch on some of the most kind of bulletproof animal resistant plants. And I say resistive because sometimes javelina especially, they don't necessarily eat them. Sometimes they dig them up just because it's just for fun. They like to dig. Their nose is set up. They're like a pig-like animal where they get this nose that turns up the soil looking for roots, worms, grubs. That's their protein source in the ground. So sometimes they're messing with your gardens, not to mess with the plant, just to see what's underneath at the root level. So I say resistive. So generally speaking, they leave these alone, but not always. Sometimes they get a wild hair and kind of go after things. But one that's probably the number one seller javelina proof plant of all the plants we sell at the garden center. You'll see them in your neighborhood. They're in every neighborhood. It's Lanacea or honeysuckle. So the botanical name is Lanacea. The common name is honeysuckle. A lot of varieties of honeysuckle. So a lot of colors. So right now in the garden center, I think we've got three colors of honeysuckle. The traditional Hall's honeysuckle. That's the one as a kid used to take out the stamens or the flowers and suck on the nectar. It's really sweet. It's got a real fragrant smell to it. Kind of a lighter Kelly green foliage to it. And it can be a ground cover that just runs up a hill or across a yard, or it can go up a trellis, up a fence. It likes to run and trail. It's got tendrils that kind of run around and grabs onto things. So most honeysuckle are that way. But we've also got purple. So the foliage is the same, a little bit deeper green, but the flower has that same yellow with purple streaks all over it. Thus the name purple honeysuckle. And there's a lemonade where they kind of combine the two. And so, but they're all equally as hardy, equally as tough. They crawl around as ground covers or up hillsides or over trellises, pergolas, and they're all javelina proof. I'd say deer proof. I'd say rabbit proof. They're just tough, and they love hot, dry, windy gardens. So that just describes all the landscapes in Arizona. We just described them. There you go. It's a good one. Doesn't like the desert. It likes the colder climates. It needs that cold. Another one, I would say mums. Mums they're beautiful plants. So chrysanthemums, the ones that are famous, they're one of the front patios of so many folks with the pumpkin right next door. The javelina will eat the pumpkin, but they're not going to touch the mums. Personal experience. No matter the color. They seem to leave them alone. I've had a deer eat the flowers off a mum once, but the javelinas generally leave them alone. I don't know why the deer did that. It probably just got bored. The problem with a deer is it's like a cow. It's got two stomachs. It's got one that it kind of digests, and then it kind of sends it down to the second one for processing. And sometimes they're grazing, and they'll just eat something before they realize, oh yeah, that's right. I don't like this. It makes me feel not so good. So then they move on. So I think Nandina, you folks in California, you know heavenly bamboo. That one, surprising. It looks delicious. You would think everything would eat it, but nothing does. And so it's just a soft, it looks like a bamboo plant, thus the name heavenly bamboo, but it doesn't spread. It's not truly a bamboo either. It's a Nandina. It's different. So it's a different variety, but it sort of has that structure, thus the name. But I think that is one of the best plants for raised beds. I grow mine in containers and along the driveway, a walkway, just out there in the landscape. There's different heights. You go head high, hip high, ankle high. They've got different models that you can plant, but all of them are just bulletproof when it comes to the animals. The one that's most thought of this time of year, especially, everyone comes in and go, I need some lavender, that real blue looking thing. It's a lavender. It's a hip high lavender. Lavender doesn't grow that tall. So it's got to be Russian sage. And people go, oh yeah, that's right. Russian sage. Where are those at? I want that big blue shrub that gets hip high, kind of 4 foot high, 4 foot wide. And it blooms from monsoon through the end of the year, through let's call Halloween. And so that is one that anytime you hear the word sage in a plant, you know you got a good plant. If you've got animals, they're not going to eat sage. Animals don't like herbal, fragrancy, high in oil kind of plants. And so the plants are using that as a defense to keep the animals off of them. So they put these fragrances on. I mean, Russian sage truly is not an herbal plant, but it takes on this characteristic because it knows it's trying to mimic herbs. So it goes, oh, I don't want to be eaten by deer. I don't want javelina to munch on me. So it puts on this smell to it. So when you rub the foliage, it has this lavendery, sagey smell to it. But it's a beautiful plant, guaranteed to bloom a long time, and animals aren't going to bother it. I would say the same thing with all the rosemary, lavender, thyme. They don't bother those. Oregano, javelina, not going to bother those. They don't like herbs because they smell, to us, they smell wonderful. To them, they go, no, that's terrible stuff. I'm not doing that. So, honey, so let's see. Oh, ivy, English ivy, that's traditionally, they're not going to bother those. Rhododendrons are not going to bother those. Azalea is not going to bother those. Wisteria, a lot of the plants that you grew up with, animals don't bother them because of this mechanism. They either have a sap they don't like, or they've got a flavor or a smell. They've got a texture sometimes, like echinacea. This is a beautiful flower. It looks like a miniature sunflower. Animals generally leave that alone because it's got a hairy stem to it. And that's a defense the plant's putting on that to keep the animals off of them. So if they munch on them, they get these hairs stuck in their throat and they're kind of going, oh man, I thought it looked so good. I need some water now. And so that plant has trained animals, don't eat this. You're going to need water after this. Just keep moving. So anyway, there's a lot of plants like that. Daylilies, animals, a great perennial flower. They're not going to bother. Carnations, that's one of my favorites. Carnations is an evergreen perennial, or carnation. What's the other name? Dianthus or pinks. All those are related plants. They don't bother any of those. Javelina, deer, rabbits, they don't bother any of them. And they've got a long bloom cycle. And with a nice evergreen, typically blue colored foliage. That's another indication of animals are not going to bother it. There's a secretion that plants throw off of them that give them that blue hue. And it's a pure defense mechanism to keep the animals off of them. So it just makes them taste bad. And so when animals see that blue color, go, no, don't eat that one. That's never good. Keep moving to look for more greens and yellows, some of the other colors. They don't like that blue color. That's why so many Arizona plants come in a blue hue to keep the mule deer off and the elk off of them. They kind of go, oh, they're not going to eat oak. They're not going to eat some of these others. Manzanita for native, generally they'll leave those alone. Manzanita's it's tough as nails. It's got that one with the red bark on it with a nice evergreen foliage. Good, strong plant that grows here. One of mine that I use quite a bit of is lavender cotton or Santalina. It's another herbally plant. It's I think it actually may be related to herbs. Got a nice silver color to it. So it's another color animals don't eat are silver or kind of a gray, real bright gray color. I would say Dusty Miller. Same way. Animals are not going to bother that. So you can mix and match. If you're right out there in the forest, you can mix and match and have a nice looking landscape that the animals aren't going to bother. If you've got a bunch of vegetables, you want to protect them. There's no vegetable that the animals aren't going to eat. If you like it, they're going to like it. So the only way to keep them out of that is I need a fence. So if you have to fence them out. So I've got a javelina-resistant list here at the Garden Center. Be glad to share that with you next time you visit. But for now, let's take a break. Be right back.
Prescott Blaze maple is the fastest local tree with brilliant red foliage.
Prescott Blaze maples grow 3 feet each year. That's fast.
Prescott Blaze maples are perfect for patios or any place a shade tree is needed.
We have a limited number of huge, instant Prescott Blaze maples, but the $249 size is exceptionally nice.
The maples are brighter in Prescott at Waters Garden Center.
Or shop online at top10trees.com.
You're listening to garden expert Ken Lain. He can be found throughout the week at Waters Garden Center in Prescott. Thanks for tuning in to the Top 10 Garden Show. You've tuned in to the Top 10 Gardener with garden expert Ken Lain. Join him daily as he answers timely garden questions that are sure to make a difference in your gardens. Now welcome your host, Ken Lain.
So I just got word or an update. In fact, the Rotary Club, Prescott Frontier Rotary, is asking me to help them get their press release published or noticed because the nonprofits, they need some help sometimes. They've got a lot of heart. They've got a lot of energy, a lot of volunteers, but connections into the community deep. How to let people know what they're doing. They're not that good at that. So most nonprofits need help. And so that's the reason 17 years ago, Lisa and I stepped up and said, hey, why don't we help Prescott Frontier Rotary really make a difference in our school systems? Their passion, Prescott Frontier Rotary, there's lots of Rotary groups. There's 4 of them right here in the Tri-Cities area alone. I think there's dozens and dozens, if not hundreds, in the state of Arizona, 34,000 globally. And each one has their own personality, their own passion, their own, what they're committed to, what they really, some are for hungry kids, some are for clean drinking water. Some of them are for Prescott Frontier Rotaries for kids and helping kids get through school smarter, stronger, better. And they've got summer schools and helping seniors graduate with that extra credit. They've got leadership training for exchange students. Their passion is kids. Well, that's what Lisa and I are about too. If you can put some female stuff in there, female leadership and all that, Lisa and I are really into it. And so we partnered with them 17 years ago. And we started a Grapes for Good event here at the Garden Center. They were looking to raise some money. And I went, hey, why don't we have a garden party? Now, back 17 years ago, a garden party, wine tastings were a brand new thing. So it's very novel. And they kind of went, oh, it took me actually 2 years to convince them. They finally came on board and they figured out that the community loves to have fun while helping raise money for great causes and giving it towards nonprofits that can have an influence. They can compound that money and do even more with it. And that's what Rotary does. Actually, Rotary, they will actually put that money into a foundation. And then they've got 2 foundations. One's international, where you put your money in, you get it all back 3 years later. So they use it for 3 years and doing great cause like ending polio, ending malaria. They actually, Rotary wants to end malaria as we know it. They're coming up with science to figure that out, which is one of the number 1 killers in third world countries. And so I forgot where I was going with that. Anyway, I'm a Rotarian too, so I've got a passion for it. But they're doing good here. But I think sometimes nonprofits need to partner up with for-profit companies because we've got all the connections. We've got the advertising. I'm taking on the big box stores. I've got no money to do it with. They've got millions of dollars to spend on advertising. I can't compete, but I got a personality. I got friends. I've been here forever. And so that is worth a lot. And it helps us really dance around the big boxes and thrive. We're thriving. So for 3 generations, we've been thriving and we're doing better than ever. But we can partner with nonprofits and help them get part of our connections. We did that this year. So it's 2 or 3 weekends ago, 2 weekends ago, they raised $105,000 in 3 hours time with a garden party here at the garden center, Waters Garden Center. And so that's what you can get. That's the synergy that happens with, I call it conscious capitalism. So I'm trying to do good, leverage our talents and money and time but I don't want to do it myself. I'd rather work through a nonprofit and help them to do it even better. I think that's where you get synergy with nonprofits. But anyway, just well done. Prescott Frontier Rotary, they meet Tuesdays at noon over at Prescott Resorts. You all did a magical job. We'll do it again next year because my team was all about it. And you raised a lot of money and doing a lot of good with it. So $105,000, that's amazing. Well done. Do some good with it. Ken and Lisa Lain here at Waters Garden Center. We love hanging out and just talking to gardeners.
Waters companion plants that grow well together are blaze maple, burning bush, spicy mums, glamour kale, and red wall creeper.
Waters' red wall creeper is specially selected to dress up those miles of stockade fence.
A mountain vine with rich green foliage turns fire engine red through autumn.
Waters' native vines are and both deer and rabbit proof.
You'll find the showiest vines here at Waters Garden Center.
Google, give me directions to Waters Garden Center.
If you want a more fruitful garden, increased success, and landscape that just feels better, then tune in daily to the Top 10 Garden Podcast. Years of tips, tricks, and garden shortcuts are guaranteed to make your gardens nicer than ever. Listen to this podcast or read Ken's weekly garden column by visiting watersgardencenter.com. That's Waters with 2 T's, gardencenter.com. Thanks for tuning in.